So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about which iPad Pro I went with on the M1 version and why I went with it, because it's honestly the cheapest version of the 12.9 inch, but let's get right into it. So the main reason I wanted to make this video is because with the iPad Pro, there is such a price difference between the cheapest model, the 11-inch M1 iPad Pro at $800, and then the most expensive model at the 12.9 inch, 16 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage, I believe at $2,400 or $2,450. So that's a huge gap in price with something that's technically the same product. You're going from $800 to almost $2,500. That's a $1,500, $1,700 difference between an iPad Pro that's an M1 iPad Pro, but then also another M1 iPad Pro. So what I wanted to do is kind of discuss which iPad Pro I got and why I got that iPad Pro, and some of the things that are going to be happening moving forward that'll help out, go with the cheaper route iPad Pro. So I ended up going with the 12.9 inch M1 iPad Pro, 128 gigabytes of storage, no 5G. So this is the cheapest base model iPad Pro for the 12.9 inch version. And if a lot of people have been watching this channel for a while, then you know that my biggest complaint with the 2018 iPad Pro, especially pre-COVID, was that I didn't put data on the iPad Pro, and I swore to myself that after this iPad Pro, if I were to upgrade to a new one, I would definitely put data on it, but times have changed and I don't need 5G at this moment, right? I'm always at home, I'm in Wi-Fi or on Wi-Fi, and then also, if I do need to hotspot something, I could just hotspot my iPhone 11 Pro Max and be able to hotspot on the go on the iPad Pro if need be. So I'm not in a situation where I need to spend the extra $200 for 5G, and then the extra $15 to $25 a month with T-Mobile to have data on this iPad Pro. And then another big thing that I had to look at before committing to the 128 gig iPad Pro was how my current storage setup was going with the old iPad Pro, the 2018 iPad Pro, because that iPad Pro was 256 gigabytes of storage. And yes, I did take up about 150 to 160 of those gigs pretty much throughout the entire time. But of that used up gigs, 80% of it was LumaFusion files and just redundant backup files of the same video clips over and over again. So I thought to myself, hey, now that LumaFusion is going to have an update version 2.5, which allows you to use an external SSD as a local drive and work off of that directly, I thought that was game over, right? Because I have a 1 terabyte SSD by RAVPower. I figure I can just plug that in, use that as a local hard drive for LumaFusion, and then I no longer have to have any LumaFusion files besides the application itself on the actual iPad Pro, which is what I've been wanting for so long. And with the addition of Thunderbolt on the iPad Pro, it just makes data transfer that much easier, and hopefully when LumaFusion does release their 2.5 update, it's going to be very smooth, and you won't really see a difference when it comes to working directly off of the internal SSD versus working off of an external SSD like the RAVPower SSD that I have. So we discussed why I didn't get 5G, we discussed why I didn't really need to go with a 256 or 512 or 1 terabyte version of the iPad Pro. And then secondly, the reason I didn't go for, more RAM is because A, you needed to go to the upper echelon of storage, right? So you couldn't get 128 gigabyte iPad Pro with 16 gigs of RAM. It's just not how Apple was selling them. So you would need to get at least a 1 terabyte iPad Pro to get 16 gigs of RAM. But my mentality was, yes, it would have been nice to have those 16 gigs of RAM, but now these iPad Pros come standard with 8 gigs of RAM, which is double what my iPad Pro had in 2018, and that iPad Pro never had any performance issues. So I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm going to double my storage anyway. I'm going to have an M1 SoC with an integrated and unified RAM. It's going to run circles around my older iPad Pro, or at least it should, even though I'm not getting 16 gigs of RAM, but I'm still doubling what I had before, and then the efficiency should be a lot better, and so far it has. So I'm not missing those 16 gigs, at least not yet. Let's see what Apple does with WWDC and makes everything a little bit more RAM intensive. And that's probably why they're letting us see how much RAM is on these iPad Pros finally, as opposed to finding out later through a Geekbench score. So that is the main reason why I didn't go with the upper echelon of 1 terabyte and 16 gigs of RAM. So I did end up going with the 12.9 inch iPad Pro, and the main reason is because I'm used to the larger form factor. I've had that 12.9 inch iPad Pro for a while, but I did also want to test out that new mini LED liquid retina XDR display that Apple put on these iPad Pros. Because yeah, with the 2018 iPad Pro, that liquid retina display was awesome. I never, thought to myself I needed a brighter screen, I needed more pixel density. Sometimes when we were out in the sun and I was using my iPad outdoors and I had the screen protector on, there might be a little bit of a glare where I had to kind of do one of these to see what was going on. But those situations were so far in between that I never thought to myself, hey, I need a brighter iPad screen. But so far with this mini LED display, this liquid retina, it has been awesome, right? It's a lot brighter, the blackers are way darker, the screen is just crisper. I don't know what it is. It just has a warmth to it that the other iPad didn't have. So far the screen is better. Is it a lot better? I don't know yet. We gotta go through a lot of testing and figure out exactly if it's worth it or not. But so far it is better, but at the same time, unless you go to this, you're not gonna miss what you don't have. So like the 2018 and the 2020 iPad Pro screen technologies are still amazing for what they are. So that's where that differentiator is kind of coming into place. It's like, how much better is it really? It's definitely better, but we're gonna find out how much better it really is as the weeks go on. So basically, $1,100 is the cheapest barrier to entry for these new 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pros. And again, a lot of it is gonna have to do with WWDC, because right now it's very hard to review these and say, hey, this is so much better than the older one and the one before that, because the form factor is the same. You don't feel like you really have anything new, especially if you're coming from those 2018 iPad Pros. But somebody did have a great comment earlier saying, hey, let's not forget that people aren't coming from current iPad Pros to this one. So yes, this is going to be a great purchase if you want the latest and greatest and you aren't coming from an iPad Pro. You will be wowed, you will love it, it'll be a great device for you to have. It'll be exactly like my 2018 iPad Pro for me, right? But for a 2018 iPad Pro user, I either want a much better software experience or give me a little bit of a different form factor, something new, like going from the iPhone 11 to the iPhone 12, right? The new form factor made everybody seem like we're getting a brand new phone, even though, it was pretty much the same, right? In all honesty. But that's pretty much going to do it for this video, everybody. What I wanted to do was essentially let you guys know why I got the cheaper iPad Pro. I wanted to basically get in as cheap as possible. Now that LumaFusion is going to have external SSD support, we have Thunderbolt support now, so data transfer speeds are going to be a lot faster. Hopefully, we still got to get a Thunderbolt hard drive. Right now, I only have USB-C SSDs, so we got to get our hands on a Thunderbolt one. But ideally, that's going to make the experience that much quicker, that much more efficient, and not need to have a bunch of stuff on your local storage device, which I try to avoid. And like I said, most of my storage is just redundant files of LumaFusion. And if you guys are LumaFusion users, then you guys know that LumaFusion does back up your files constantly, which is a blessing and a curse, because it does take up a lot of space, but at the same time, for the most part, you're always covered if something does happen with your project. But that's for a different story. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. So let me know what you think. Are you guys going to wait for WWDC to come around and let us know what iPadOS 15 looks like before you commit to this new M1 iPad Pro? Or are you just going to take the deep dive right now, or hold on to your current iPad Pro, or like I said, just hold off in general for iPadOS 15? Because I think that's going to be the biggest reasoning as to why the M1 iPad Pro has a space in this tablet or computer or whatever you want to call the iPad nowadays, right? In this tablet world. Because iPadOS 15 should be a nice little game changer for that M1 iPad Pro. But that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, peace.